Good morning, everyone. Lovely to be with you this morning. I hope you can see and hear me all right. My name is Ulla Koenig. I'm a mindfulness Dharma teacher from southern Germany, and I'm happy to be with you this week talking about the second noble truth, and we're going to explore further today. But before we start diving into these different forms of clinging today, just let me give you the usual structure and framework. There is the chat box where you're just saying hello and good morning to each other, and that is lovely. Much of what makes this Sangha Life community so precious is your exchange with each other and the compassion and the kindness you bring to the Sangha. So it's very much appreciated. And if you have a question, or maybe you practice a bit or reflect a bit on the teachings of this week, just feel free to put that in, and I'm happy to explore with you further. If it's addressed to me or you want me to respond to it, you might put something in capital letters like sharing question inside in front of it, so I might go and respond to that later. And also any technical issues we had yesterday, just put it into the chat box, and someone in the Sangha usually knows how to solve that. So it's the place to go with your questions, your reflections, whatever kind they are. And I'm going to talk for 15 minutes about today's theme, and then we're going into meditative practice related to that theme. And afterwards, we can have this sharing questions, reflections part at the end of the session. And finally, just to mention, you know probably that these sessions run on donation. And at the end of the session, I will provide a link. And if you are able to share something with Sangha Life, and part of what you share is going to the teachers, in this case to me, and I very deeply appreciate what you have given in the past and will give this week. So big thanks to all of you. Okay, let's dive in. We talked about, you might remember if you were there, we talked about clinging yesterday, and we hear so much about clinging, holding on, and there are a lot of misconceptions around that concept. We can feel really bad about, I am clinging to something and I don't know how to let go. Just a small suggestion right at the beginning of this session. Can we take the I out of the equation? Yeah. As a response to experience based on causes and conditions, something in our beingness, we can call it the heart mind, starts to cling, to harden around something. It's not I who decided to cling to something. Clinging is usually quite unpleasant. So if I were in control, I'd rather let go. Yeah. So something in the beingness thinks it's the way to go. It's the safest way. It's the most nourishing way. It's the most productive way to cling. And the same is if I am not the one clinging, I can't be the one deciding just by mere willpower to stop clinging. Yeah, this equation never goes. I can maybe with willpower choose a different thing to do or choose a different thing to think about. Yeah, but this hardening inside, this holding on, is almost always not touchable by just willpower. It needs a softening, it needs a calming, it needs a nourishment of some sort, it needs a soothing, it needs a softening inside to stop the clinging. So just to touch upon a very first misconception, that it is me who does the clinging, so it has to be me who has to do the letting go. And I want to explore a bit further on that today with this first kind of thirst we discovered yesterday, these urges which drive us so deeply. And the first one, the Dukkha, the Buddha mentioned, was kama tanha, the thirst and urge to experience. You want an experience. So let's look in how that comes together. There are these unpleasant experiences in our lives. And we said yesterday, these unpleasant experiences, they provoke a reaction in form of needs and desires. So far, so good, no problem. But these needs and desires, they can get quite charged. They can become compelling. They can become driven. And then we call it clinging. And such a clinging, such an urge, such a thirst is characterized by, we said it yesterday, the Buddha named 4 characteristics: an incapacity to be okay with this moment. Yeah, I want a future, a better version of this moment in the future, which is either a version of a better me, yeah, or got rid of something about me, or has some sort of experience to it. The idea that this future will be rewarding, kind of problem solving, an obsession about that, and a fragmentation of the being. Yeah, fragmentation of the attention, fragmentation of physical experience, pushing, pulling, and so on. And today we speak about one of these urges. The Buddha characterized them, or put them into 3 heaps almost. And the first one is kama tanha, a thirst, an urge to experience something. And I wanted to just show you, I came across a perfect example yesterday evening, just shortly before going to bed, about how harmless this can look, yeah, and actually is, and how we can notice in the small everyday life tanha, thirst. So you might see this thing here. It's a Rubik's Cube, and my son got it for his birthday on Monday. And I said something about the capacity for the mind to obsess around things, and that I discovered already that my mind has some tendency towards that. And some of that part is to say, if my mind is put in front of a problem, it will go into a habit of trying to solve that. Yeah. And such a Rubik's Cube is kind of a problem. It's an unsolved riddle, puzzle piece. And I went to bed yesterday and I found an online tutorial on how to do a Rubik's Cube. So while my partner was reading, I was just trying to do this. And then I noticed how just this natural wish for playfulness and trying something out, all beautiful and good, turned into tanha, turned into an urge. I noticed how hard it was to put that down. The hour arrived where I usually go to bed and should be sleeping. And I noticed that the mind was going, oh, we could do just a little bit more. Look at that, it's almost solved, yeah. And I noticed how, an obsession started to grow. And maybe this idea of, how pleasant it would be, just the solving of a problem, just the solving of a challenge sometimes can be so pleasant, yeah. To say, oh, it would be so beautiful to have that thing solved, yeah. Not because particularly saying something about me. I mean, I was using a YouTube tutorial, nothing fancy, but just like a little tanha there, yeah, and noticing just how the mind reacts to that. It gets quicker, yeah. A pull starts to grow within me, and it wants to solve that thing. And thanks to our session today, I was very aware of the theme. I noticed, oh, this is tanha. Yeah, this is tanha. And I know if I'd follow through on that, I might not be sleeping in an hour or so, and probably give a pretty bad talk this morning. So I was able to actually put it down. Yeah. But just to show you how something very daily, very simple, actually holds the potential for both playfulness and lightness, and can harden, crystallize into something which we call a thirst, tanha. I hope this example works for you. So, kama tanha also often arises in response to dukkha. So you experience something unpleasant on the whole scale, from something like truly unpleasant, harsh, hard in your life, downwards the scale to just boredom or a lack of stimulus and intensity. All of this we would consider to be dukkha. And naturally arises a wish in the being to be distracted. Distracted from this, or to compensate for this unpleasant experience. So dukkha comes in, it almost it taps on the heart mind, it gnaws on the heart mind, and the heart mind responds with saying, I need something different. I need to compensate for that. I want to be distracted from this. And I don't want to feel this, taste this, hear this, see this, touch this. but instead want to feel that, taste that, and so on. So out of this, a certain idea might arise and harden that this experience would make me feel good. And then it hardens and crystallizes further, and then we are around a complex of I have to have this, or I can't stand this, I can't bear this, this has to go away. This is where the intensity now comes in, and you might hear that little word I re-arising. The self hardens into something. Now it becomes the agent, which has to push through that clinging, push or get that clinging's desire, get that clinging's need done. So the self crystallizes, hardens together with the tanha, and becomes the agent to have this. And you will notice how strong the sense of self is sometimes when we're in these states of clinging. They almost go together. And well, if you just have a wish or a desire, the sense of self might be way softer, way softer. Not that much pressure behind the sense of I have to get this, I have to become this. And unfortunately, it's just naturally, we are gifted with an intention, a form of attention which constantly checks whether we feel all right, or whether there is some potential to feel better. Yeah. So our form of attention is such that it will check outwardly and inwardly. Is it okay? Is it okay? Is there room for improvement? Is it okay? And you will notice that if the heart mind is shaken by some dukkha, this checking can be on high alert. It will check, is it safe? Is it still safe? Is it safe now? Are you safe? Are we safe? Is the other one reliable? And you notice that maybe after a session of meditation or just some quiet days, your form of attention can shift quite dramatically. But we have this intention which will continue to check whether we feel all right. And based on how it's formed, of course, there is a suggestion for a whole lot of experiences which we either want to have or not want to have. And having this attention and having it fueled by dukkha in some sort of way makes us at times very vulnerable, for the hooks of the inside and the outside to buy into that kama tanha, to buy into wanting to have an experience, needing to have an experience. We are vulnerable to those messages. And just guess what? Who plays with this vulnerability of checking whether we're okay or checking whether it could be better? Advertisement. It's so obvious and so clear. Some messages of advertisement are about scarcity, and a lot these days just about potential threats and fear. Advertisement in some form of politics, they literally play with this form of attention. They artificially signal threat and danger. It's not safe. It's problematic. Do something. And I would say that part of our practice needs to be to ground and discharge and earth ourselves so that we are not so vulnerable to messages which play with our attention for threat and danger. And the other one is that we are not so vulnerable to messages which promise us a perfect sensory experience. Whole advertisement says, if you get this, you will be really happy. It will taste great. It will make you forget about all your day. And if you feel like a little playfulness, just pay a day of mindfulness to the advertisement which is coming across to you, and just see how that plays with your kama tanha. How that plays with your attention, how that plays with this ongoing wish or idea of the heart mind to check whether you're safe or to check whether it can get better than this. And with this kama tanha, we are also invited to find a middle way, to say there are appropriate needs and desires we all have, to care for this body, care for this heart, and of course it's appropriate to enjoy beauty. The Buddha in the sutras over and over again emphasized the importance of beauty, yeah. And of course it's important to nourish this body, and of course it's important to be in touch with appreciation, for example. We had it the other day to say, of course, appreciation is beautiful, yeah. But can I notice when this natural wish for appreciation, yeah, hardens into a clinging, yeah, hardens into I have to have, yeah, and then to know there's the pain around that. So the middle way is basically evolving around this difference between a natural desire, a natural wish, and a hardening into a clinging, yeah. And this is almost like a mindful practice of felt sense of what is going on inside. Can I feel this out? Do I know how a need feels like? And do I know how a cling feels like? How does this wish make me feel? Yesterday, when I lay in bed, I could almost it was not so much a question about thinking whether it's appropriate to do a Rubik's Cube in bed, but rather feeling inside and noticing, no, there is drivenness, yeah, and I do not trust this drivenness very much. I know from the past it will make me do things I later regret, and I can physically feel this drivenness, yeah. Another thing with my thoughts, for example, to differentiate that is to have space around it, yeah, or is it so demanding, so imperative, yeah, that you have to, yeah. Your happiness depends upon this. Your relation depends upon this. And all these stories the thinking mind can tell. And over time, I came to mistrust this imperative. So if something inside says, you have to, yeah, you have to. You're not allowed to pause that thought. You're not allowed to put that down for a minute. You're not allowed to lay back and maybe not decide yet, yeah, to say, oh, interesting. Something within me is signaling a lot of pressure, a lot of drivenness. Rather than going into the content of the thoughts, I come into the felt sense of them saying, oh, I notice this is tanha. And this is usually something which leaves me too little leverage space to have wisdom with it. So that is one aspect of dealing with this karma tanha, is to really differentiate between a healthy need and clinging. Yeah, and of course, and the Buddha said that to his ascetic friends, the practice is not about self-mortification. It's about not becoming needless. Yeah, it's about softening the clinging and then catering with wisdom to the needs we all have and beautifully have. The other thing I think which is really important is to have some resilience towards unpleasant experiences. Yeah. To say I can't, now we're speaking the scale here, of course, yeah. There are some unpleasant experiences which will just trigger us, and we don't need to think that we have to be able to bear everything, yeah. But the small, everyday, little nitty-gritties, yeah, can I be aware of them, and can I develop through practice, through mindfulness, and through a whole lot of compassion, so much resilience that they do not constantly push and shove me into these forms of clinging. What I'm speaking about, perfect example, you might know that as well, is that usually in the evenings, yeah, many of us come back from work, maybe a full day of taking care of someone or something, and there has been the pangs of dukkha all day long, maybe needs which we have not been able to address to, maybe a physical tiredness, maybe some ache, maybe some conflict accumulated over the day. Now, in response to the dukkha we feel in the evening when we come home and are really tired, the mind goes into karma tanha and says, okay, we need to compensate for that. We need to distract ourselves from the drivenness, the achiness we feel inside. What can I get to eat, or what can I get myself to watch on Netflix or something? Very natural trajectory here. Yeah, say, of course, the heart mind wants to nourish back, feed back some pleasant experience in the hope that this will make up for the dukkha we experienced over the day. And sometimes we notice we can't stop that. Yeah, I notice I can't stop that. For me, the bridge here, or which cuts this dependent arising link, is really compassion. Yeah, a way to say also over the day to say, wow, this was hard. And finding small abilities to be with that, to acknowledge that, and then to discharge some of it. Yeah, just to discharge some of it so that I do not end up with this heap of dukkha in the evening, which will be so strong and so unpleasant that it pushes me into clinging and grasping for something. Okay. And then maybe the last two ones are to befriend our needs rather than to be afraid of our needs and wishes. As long as we are afraid that every need and wish is clinging, and not appropriate, we will push back, and say, I'm not catering to you, you are potentially dangerous because I'm not sure whether I should have needs, and then we create so much dukkha, we create so much friction, we get the body, heart and mind into so much lack and hunger, that the backlash comes. And now that based on the amount of lack we have developed, it's very easy for clinging and craving to arise. So we won't react with wisdom anymore, we react with overshoot. And suddenly something says, I'm so hungry, I have to have this now. And then we have karma tanha, which we can't stop because the trigger, the dukkha, is based on this amount of hunger which is underlying the situation. So catering constantly, caringly to our needs and wishes is important. Of course, we need to negotiate them. Of course, we need to find appropriate amounts. But if we don't do so, if you fall into self-mortification, there will be an overshoot and a backlash. Okay. I hope this sums up karma tanha a bit for us this morning. So I said it's a natural response to dukkha. It is a clinging around having a certain experience, or having a certain experience stop and having an alternative experience instead. And it's based on our attention, which constantly checks whether we are all right and whether there is potential to feel better. I also said, due to causes and conditions, the culture and the society we live in, we experience a lot being played upon our natural instruments, so to say, with advertisement and messages of threat and danger. Fear. I think the English word might be fear mongering. So that is done a lot to us. And then to explore back our middle path, to know the difference between a need and a clinging, to develop some resilience towards unpleasant experience, and then to befriend our needs and have a friendly, caring, wise relationship to them. Okay, that's it for today. Let's go into meditation. So, what about finding an appropriate place for you to sit, to stand, to lie down? And after all these words, we allow for some time for the mind to empty out. And maybe we just wait for a minute together, for a couple of moments, just to see the first desire or wish to pop up. Maybe to shift the posture. Maybe to be somewhere else in this moment. Maybe to have a different body or mind or heart experience. Just see in the silence what pops up for you. Before you give in to that desire, that wish, maybe by shifting the posture or trying to respond to it in any way, can you linger for just a moment and just feel how that desire feels like? Maybe there's a felt sense to it. And then very slowly, not out of a command or an impulse, but out of a caring way of paying attention. Maybe shift a little the posture, change the way you're sitting, standing, lying. Respond with a caring breath, whatever feels like an appropriate response to this desire, this wish. And after this response has settled, see whether you can find some calm, some rest somewhere in the body, in the breath, anchoring, rooting, maybe through the sitting bones and the feet on the floor. As if this whole body, heart and mind are for a moment invited to come to a rest, come to a pause, rather than constantly having to react and to respond to experience. Now it's the time to settle in. Just a posture, some way of standing, lying, sitting, which would be good enough to relax a little, soften a little. Maybe you can find some places within the body which respond well to this invitation to say, oh, time to stop and pause at last. Time for a break. And you might notice how the attention wanders towards those places which kind of disturb that broader sense of relaxation and ease in this moment. This tight shoulder, this contracted breathing, this flickering behind the eyes, the thinking, and how the mind goes saying, if this would be different, I could relax. And how does this feel like? This desire, this wish for your body, your physical experience to be different. Can you feel that out? And now instead of doing very much with this tight shoulder, this flickering mind, this tightness of the breath body, can you soothe your attention saying, it's okay, it's not a problem, it's not a threat. It's a bit of unpleasantness, yes, but we can allow for that to stay. Dear attention, come back into those places which feel all right. Where we already can sense a little ease, softness, lightness, warmth, tenderness. And your softness, your lightness might be a very small experience, maybe just the size of a coin or the fingertip. And it might just be okayish, nothing sensational. To feel out the good enough places. If your attention is a bit fragmented this morning, can't stay anywhere for very long, that's okay too. You could just, every time it hops into a thought or explores this and explores that, as soon as you have reconnected with it, just drop the question, what is okay now? What is soft now? What is comfortably heavy now? Maybe it's able to stay with that for half an inhale before it hops away again. And every now and then you will notice how the attention has almost bitten into an experience, has contracted around it, rubs against it, pushes, pulls, says, this is not the way I would like to have things. And before you do anything, feel that out. Feel that sense of contraction, drivenness, push, pull. Feel that out. Familiarize yourself. And maybe just by noticing that sense of stress which comes up, this pressure which comes up by handling the experience this way, saying, oh dear attention, it's not worth it. It's not worth clinging. Come back to something which you can rest in, dear attention. Something slightly okay, slightly pleasant. Maybe you get a glimpse of the busyness of the attention to check out whether this is okay situation or whether there is improvement, and how much agitation, how much energy that actually costs, and how much it can distract us from the okayness of this moment. Saying this might all be true, dear attention. Yeah, there is this tightness in the shoulders and this heaviness of the heart, and And there is this pleasant sense of leaning back into the chair, into the bed, into the mattress. This gentle softening of the back body, whatever it is for you. We can invite our attention to bathe, to fully bathe and immerse itself in these available, okay feelings. So try that out, dear attention. Or maybe that starts to radiate then. Radiate and become larger in our field of awareness. And if your attention cannot settle in, don't be hard on yourself. Just acknowledge that there might be so much drive and drivenness, an echo of past dukkha within, so that it is not possible for the attention to settle this morning. We can respond to that with compassion, saying, "Oh, dear attention, something stirred you up so intensely that you truly need to keep an eye on potential threats. There might be something so unpleasant within your physical experience or your mind that the attention finds it too challenging, too difficult to settle down while this is working within." We can put a hand on our heart and say, "Wow, this is dukkha." Not being able to settle with our attention is hard. Not easy to be with a mind like this. May I find calm and ease. May I find moments of lightness. May I find ways to unburden this being. May we very gently come back to doing something, come back to maybe moving the body gently, slightly, or let the body do the work. We can leave the eye out of the picture for just another moment and stretch, and body stretches, body yawns, body sighs, body knows what to do. And when you feel ready, you make your slow transition back to the screen. So, a couple of things I share with you while you might start to think about something to share with the Sangha this morning. It would be interesting in everything from your explorations with the texts in the past couple of days, or questions, some concerns, some resistances. Everything is very much welcomed. And here is my email address for those things to share and those questions to share which do not want to be shared in public. That is appropriate too. Here is my calendar link if you need or wish for a one-to-one conversation. I offer these, and usually on Friday mornings. I updated the calendar. It was blocked for some technical reason. And these sessions are on donation if you feel like that would be appropriate for you. And final thing to share is the upcoming Daily Life online retreat in November, where we practice every day together, 3 times a day, involved into our daily life structure. Okay, these were the things I wanted to share with you. And now I saw that someone already contributed something. Here we go. Question. The urge towards right speech is what I'm resisting. Yeah, for moving towards right speech feels judgmental, non-accepting. I tend to run into this kind of challenge in my practice, the balance between compassion, acceptance, non-judgment, and feeling the emotional tonality arising, or right speech. My balance stays in compassion, acceptance, non-judgment. My mind's urge towards this. Yeah, suggestions for practice, please. If I understand correctly, speech is a middle way as well. So maybe you tap on into this, and if I understand you not correctly, please reply. On the one hand, we're told to speak with compassion and acceptance and non-judgmental ways, and on the other hand, we might experience that the behavior of others, for example, is harmful to us, to others. We might experience that our clinging or our needs as well, our wishes, can only be respected if we set boundaries, for example, to others. So how does that go together? The compassion, the acceptance, and the non-judgment, and this need, for example, to set certain boundaries, or to say a clear no to someone or something. And this is for me a middle way as well. It's a middle way where compassion is going towards self and other, acceptance is going towards self and other. And I feel in order to do that, I need very often to try to discharge my anger, my frustration, my dukkha before going into the conversation. What I mean by saying that is that I give a good eye that conversation, sometimes challenging conversation, is not the place where I discharge my dukkha. The other is not, how do you call that in English? What we have to get the lightning bolts into the earth on a house, like this way to discharge. The other is not that. Even if the behavior was harmful, the other is not there to discharge. My feelings, my emotions, my dukkha, my clinging. That is my part of the task. And when I discharged, and sometimes I can't do that and have a conversation at the same point. So I priority to the discharge and then to go into the clarifying conversation. When I discharged, I might have the clarity and the wisdom to bring in a good balance between compassion for myself and the other, compassion and acceptance for myself and the other, and then to go into negotiation of needs and setting clear boundaries which are not added upon blame and a sense of guilt and accusation, but just coming out from a place of clarity. I hope that gives some sort of an idea. Shelley is sharing. I have intrusive thoughts and urges. Sometimes they pop up in the midst of conversation and social situation that take me off from my attention. What's your advice to deal with these unpleasant situations in skillful ways? Thank you, Shelley, for sharing that. So it will be maybe a challenging practice, but a practice to, first of all, saying these thoughts which pop up, these impulses which pop up. They are not me, they are not mine, and they are not who I am. As soon as we allow the link to be built between that thought is popping up and it says something about me, who I am, what kind of person I am. Yeah, it can become really troubled. Yeah, it's more like the mind forms into a form of thunderstorm, and then every now and then a lightning bolt goes through. Yeah, but the lightning bolts is nothing about who you are. Yeah, it's just like watching that go through. Maybe taking an inhale and an exhale for it to fully discharge, and then to allow it to just vanish into spaciousness. Yeah. If we start to get engaged with it, yeah, try to push it away, we're distracted. If we try to link it with or defend ourselves from it, or distance ourselves from it, or justify why we're having it, we're engaged with it. So I hope that just pausing for them and then allowing them to shoot through. They are there. They're not wished for and not created by you, but they're also not saying something about you. So creating that little breather, and then kindly asking the other, where were we? Like remembering the last sentence you said, coming back into the conversation. The less we make out of them, the easier it will probably be for them to just discharge and yeah, move through. Let me know what you think. David is asking, do you have any suggestions for indecisiveness? I see this as a kind of dukkha. Yes. I'm in two mind whether to have new COVID vaccination or not. Yeah, just an example. Vaccination or not, should I stay or should I go? All these questions. Indecisiveness can be a fear of doing something wrong. The mind can get so preoccupied finding the right decision. Yeah, that is a myth. The right decision is a myth, and the mind can get incredibly confused and entangled in that. What if we put away that label of the right decision and say, well, there are two decisions to make in the situation: vaccination, no vaccination. Both will have advantages and disadvantages. And based on these advantages and disadvantages, they will have something to do with my values. They will have something to do with my sense of integrity, maybe, my values, but also my preferences and my needs. Yeah. And the one decision will more cater to the one values and the one needs, and the other will cater more to the other values and the other needs. Yeah. And maybe by seeing what each decision addresses, I can say, in this moment in time, I wish to emphasize these needs and these values. I go for that decision, fully knowing that the other decision might be an okay decision as well. We could understand even someone who is coming, who is deciding for the other thing, because we now see that these values and needs would be appropriate to have as well. So there is no mistake and no failure to make. And to know this and to push away this label, peel off this label of right decision, can help with the indecisiveness. Let me know, David, whether this is helpful. Pauline is saying, in the Buddhist approach towards clinging, is there also attention to trauma-inflicted needs? So needs that come from a past, not only wanting to be met, but actually having this existential somatic imperative that might not be calmed by practice, but actually are something for the being to be met practically. Yes, Pauline, thank you very much. So, of course, we have the momentarily dukkha, and we have this echo towards past experience, which can linger and which can be very strong. A hard mind which has been in a traumatic experience will be very slow to trust the okayness of this moment, to trust the okayness of this relationship. It is much more likely to be on the search on whether this is safe or whether this is okay, and whether, so the shadow of the past is almost inflicting, mingling up with our way of paying attention, judging situations. It's like the shadow of the past is like a veil over the present situation. And because it's more charged, it's much more likely that we drop into clinging, that we drop into wanting something different. So we would almost need like external system to help us through with, to say, I don't go for certain actions. Even if this clinging is very strong, I know from how painful it is to do this, to go there, to think that, yeah, I'm not going to go there. And to have this very clear framework, yeah, to say, these kind of actions, I know them clearly to be harmful at the moment. I'm not going to do that. Whether it's thought, speech, thinking, yeah, to have a clear framework. And then to work a lot with showing the heart mind the okayness and showing the heart mind safe relationship moments, just to feed it back, the okayness. I hope this helps, Pauline. It definitely takes a lot of time and maybe a skilled other to show you what to work with. Thank you. So Christian is saying, a lot of resistance this morning. Yeah. And mind very hard to settle. The Buddha talks about gritting teeth and forcing will as last resort over thoughts. Oh, does this go against acceptance and compassion? I wonder which sutta you have this from. It could be Majjhima Nikaya 20, where he suggests a 5-step process to work with thoughts. And the very last resort to deal with really painful, troubling thoughts and impulses would be to grit your teeth, enforcing will. I would say this last resort is for thoughts like suicidal thoughts, or actually thoughts which will lead to impulses to harm yourself or others. Yeah, and everything before that, the 4 steps before that, I would say cover probably 95% of our usual daily thoughts. So you might be interested in looking into this sutta and exploring a bit into alternative ways, and to keep that as a last resort. Yeah, I think there are other ways to deal with troubled thinking rather than just willpower, and they might go much more along with your need for acceptance and compassion, which I can read into in your lines. Yeah. Nicola is writing, King of Dukkha is a great way to describe indecision. Yeah, some of us really experience the pain of indecision. So for some of us, it will be the King of Dukkha, where others will have different kind of kings and queens. Okay, so thank you for being here this morning. Tomorrow we talk about the thirst and the clinging to being some better version of ourselves, and that can be King of Dukkha too. And I'm looking forward to explore that with you tomorrow. Thank you so much for coming.